for Shane Warne. And he's done it.
We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening in.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Aussies Abroad on the B Sample Sports Network, where we cover Aussies kicking ass on the world stage every single day. This week, guys, we're going to start off a little bit differently. Three of us live in the nation's capital, and as of 5 o'clock Savo, we've been into lockdown number 2, well, technically number 1, but this is actually number 2. Bo, Ness, welcome back. How are you guys feeling 2 hours and 49 minutes into our second lockdown?
I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be in lockdown. It's perfect timing too. I wanted it to wait a little bit longer for the NFL season to properly start. It's perfect lockdown time.
It's perfect.
But, for me, I'm happy, and my partner has to still go to work. So,
yeah,
sucked into her. Happy days for me, man.
How about you, Ness? What do you think?
Oh, look, in true COVID fashion, it could have really been during the Olympics, and then I would have been totally happy to just chill and watch sport all day. COVID's doing its own thing, isn't it? What are we? What do you say? We're a few hours in. I'm done already. I'm sick of it and want to get back to work and normality. But stay safe, Canberrans, and let's get the hell through this. And I really think they've taken the right approach, though. Like, let's go hard. Let's get it done, and let's hopefully move forward quickly.
Yeah, so our first lockdown we had early last year, I was part of the essential workers, but now construction is not classed as essential work. So in the last hour, I found out that I get the next 7 days off, so I couldn't care less. I'm stoked.
Let's go. Give us the football season. Give us college football Sundays.
Exactly. I know. Soon. We are so close. Anyway, we'll touch on the NFL later because that starts this week officially. The preseason games actually start tomorrow, so this will be fantastic. But let's start off with a bit of news about Tokyo. Really happy to see the games over there. I'll sort of touch on that later. What do you guys take out of the whole event? Was it a success? Was it good waiting a year to have it? Did Tokyo do the right thing? Ness, you got to start on this. What do you think?
I think they did an exceptional job. And I think in earlier episodes, we talked about that we never doubted the Japanese putting on a really good games. I think they did the right thing in waiting. And I think there was a lot of hesitancy around doing so. And I think, the Japanese had a lot of cases. So the fact that they pulled this off is pretty incredible. Running any event is really hard. And so the fact they did, this on the world stage during a pandemic is pretty phenomenal. They would have been up against some serious challenges. So I listened to a podcast driving back from home actually this week, and John Stephenson talked about how it really was the inclusive games, and how, we just saw, and we'll touch on some of this later in our good, bad and uglies, but we saw some really incredible things that are probably different from other Olympics. It probably just showed how united the athletes are from different countries, that they probably all sense the craziness that has been COVID. And we saw that in some of the stories that came out. We saw it in some of the results. So for me, I think an amazing effort. It was cool to watch. I got to learn a whole lot more about sports I had no idea about. The Aussies smashed it, and full credit to every person, including the volunteers, that did just a really great job in putting on a really amazing games in challenging times.
Yeah, there was a few things I was very happy with I think the 46 medals in total. Some of the newer sports, that the skateboarding, stuff like that, the events that we weren't particularly supposed to win medals in. Some disappointing things were the Olyroos. I think they should have done better after their win, I think, in the first game. The Matildas falling a bit short, them too, the Opals especially. I think they were hurt without, what's her name there, Liz there. So I think those events didn't really help us a lot, but I was kind of disappointed that we didn't reach 50 medals. I know that's being selfish. We got to 46 and a few days out, I was looking going, oh man, maybe 50. I think that's the best games we've ever done. So it's good to see. We seem to get better and better every time. So it's nice. Bo, what do you think, mate? Was it a success?
Yeah, I can't touch on too much more than what you guys said. You've done good, but I mean, how do you really judge the Olympics as a success or not, without being, as far as Japan hosting it anyway? Like, how many bad stories came out of the Olympics? I think they've done a great job, considering the circumstances. Obviously, the Aussies have killed it. We should be proud about that. But what they managed to do under the circumstances, I think, great Olympics. For me personally, it happens every Olympics. You kind of forget how involved and how interested you get into it. And that's just the best thing. You find yourself, so we've touched on it previously, but you just find yourself getting so invested in things outside the Olympics, like you really don't have that much of a drive for. So I really loved it. I enjoyed it. I'm sad it's over, but we've got more Olympics coming in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so as you said there, mate, the Paralympics start on the 24th of August and run through to the 5th of September, which is Father's Day. And that's when our good friend Michael Roger is racing in the marathon on Father's Day. We'll touch on that in a couple of weeks' time, because that 5th of September is also the week college football starts. So there's a lot of big games on, and the rugby league and the AFL will be 1 or 2 weeks into their finals season. So some of our teams will be there and some won't. Is that right? Yes.
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 Correct.
Some of them will, some will not. I want to talk now about Paris. So they had the ceremony at the end on Sunday night, and they handed the torch over to Paris. Now, Paris is going to be the host of the 2024 Olympic Games, so only 3 years away. Some sports that are not going to make an appearance in Paris are baseball, softball, and karate. They're not making an appearance now. One sport that is break dancing. Yes, you heard that right. Break dancing.
Are you joining in?
You're not on. Did you qualify, Steve? Break dancing. I should. I'm good, right? I know I'm sticking you guys on the spot here, but is break dancing a sport?
No.
No.
I struggle with some of this.
Yeah.
Someone said to me today that unless it has a ball, it's not a sport, and I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about that, because that's, I think Bo said it as well. Someone at work said it today. I don't know. I think it's recreation, but it's probably for me in the same category as skateboarding or maybe even surfing. But speaking
of surfing, Paris will host this surfing event, even though Paris is, of course, not surrounded with ocean. Little did I know, but I found out Tahiti is a French colony. So Tahiti will host the surfing, and Tahiti is 15,000 kilometers from Paris, but it's still a French owned. So it'll be the longest distance ever between an event and its home. So there you go. Facts.
Oh, there's a cool story coming out next. That is cool.
Yeah.
That'll overtake the COVID Olympics. That'll be way more interesting.
Yeah, if you're spread out there. Look, and just while we're touching on the Olympics, 2 more things next week, and we've got an actual sports scientist coming on the show, and she spent the last month in Paris, so in Tokyo, and she'll be on the show next week, all going well, and she is going into lockdown, I think, on Friday. So all going to plan. We should speak to her this weekend. Finally, Ness, you and I had a conversation during the week about netball being added to the Olympics in Brisbane in 2032. It's a good thing for the sport. Why do you think it's taken so long for netball to come back? What do you think?
Look, you know what I'm going to say already, and that netball is the greatest sport on earth, and I'm okay if you disagree with that. That's fine. Look, I actually think it's taken so long because the big powerhouses, powerhouse countries are not, it's not their dominant sport. So the US, China, Russia, you think of the big wigs, they don't play netball. It's not their predominant sport. And I really think that that's the truth. It has typically been more a Commonwealth sport, but I feel like if we're about to make exceptions to make breakdancing a sport in the Olympic Games, then a sport that's played by 20 million people worldwide in 80 countries, and 1.2 million of those, are juniors and women and men that play in Australia, then I think we've got a solid case, for an Olympics in Brisbane. Brisbane, I think is going to be a great place for that to be showcased if of course that comes off.
And surely I understand that at the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, there's a certain amount of sports which have to be there, and then you can add your own sports in. So obviously if a country is hosting and they're good at a certain sport, then they can have that sport. It's been in the Commonwealth Games now since 1992, I think, if I'm correct. The reason that is because England, New Zealand, and Australia are all Commonwealth nations, and the three of them are the three best netballing nations. So I think the other nations are scared. The US are scared. Canada is scared. Yeah. China, everyone else. That's a medal they're not going to win. So why would they have that event when they know Australia is going to win it? So that's what it is.
I think another thing too is netball is a sport. Sorry, Bo. I'll let you go.
No, you're sorry. I don't know who the big teams in netball are. Who are the world teams in netball that have a chance?
Yeah, I mean, certainly Australia, New Zealand, England, but notwithstanding that South Africa and Malawi, are certainly coming up the ranks and contesting. England's beaten Australia a number of times. Malawi and South Africa actually have an ex-Australian coach. So they're really developing through their junior ranks, and their national team is getting really good. Some of those players also play across in our national league here. So, I think they're really, that gap is certainly closing between the traditional Australia-New Zealand rivalry, and we're seeing some of those other countries starting to dominate. But I think, netball as a sport hasn't actually ever sold how good a sport it is. We're not, the athletes are a little bit, probably conservative and a bit timid, and you don't have the Liz Cambridges of the world that are really controversial and vocal. So I think as a sport, we're sort of immature in many ways. And, I think it's now time to actually tell the great story that is netball. And, this is a perfect opportunity. I can't, if it's not going to be added in 2032, I can't see it ever being added.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, well, all going well. Hopefully it's there for us to win another gold medal. That would be very nice. Now, Bo, it's time for us to talk about cricket. Now, I believe we touched on this last week and the week earlier. The Aussies are playing a T20 tournament over in Bangladesh, and we went down 4-1 in that best of 5 series, and we actually got bowled out for our lowest ever score of 62. Now, this is all your fault, mate. Look, tell us why. What happened?
Mate, if I had the answer, I'd be applying for that coaching role. Let me tell you, I'm lost for words, man. It's been a few days to kind of get yourself together, regroup, come up with a strategy, if that's what it is. If you're representing Australia, you're a good cricketer. It's not. I don't think it's for lack of talent, but obviously something's going wrong here, and. What it is, good luck to you, me, Justin Langer, Don Bradman. I don't think would be able to sort that out. I don't know what's happening there, man, but it's hopefully a slump. It's hopefully something we get over soon, because it's to the point where it's kind of embarrassing. Yeah,
there's been a few Aussies that have opted out of tours lately. The tour of the West Indies and the tour of Bangladesh. Of course, some of these guys are contracted to Cricket Australia, and they've opted out of the tournament. Now, the IPL went on hold, and the IPL is coming back in like 3 weeks. So it'd be very interesting to see how many of those guys who opted out of the tournament in COVID nations are now going to opt back in to go play IPL to make a hell of a lot more money than their Cricket Australia contract. So
way more money.
Yeah, definitely. So some of them are probably only on 100,000, 200,000 for their Cricket Australia contract, and that's a year. And IPL, they're probably getting 7 figures for 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm interested to see.
Go in there and make some money.
Yeah, exactly. And most of them don't need money. Like we're not talking 50,000 a year. Like it's not like working. So, but it'll be interesting to see how they go. So,
but find some form. Use it to find some form.
Yeah. Yes. And with the Ashes coming up at the end of this year, if it all still goes ahead, there's a lot at stake at the moment. I think the Ashes will happen. There'll be a 50 over thing, and then there'll be T20s roughly in February and March next year. So there's a lot of cricket coming up. So these guys need to show their worth now. So
100%. Yeah, you're fighting for a job now, huh? You
are, yes. Speaking about Australian teams being terrible, the Wallabies have gone down to the All Blacks 33-25. We look good. We looked strong in the first half. I watched the first half. They were in front at halftime, and they ended up going down 33-25. There's not a lot more to say on this. They're playing at Eden Park again this week at 5:00 on Saturday. I'm scared. The 3 guys that were dropped last week are back in the team. I don't think that'll help. We haven't won at Eden Park since the 3 of us were alive. So I don't know. I don't want to say.
Where it's due. I reckon
stranger things have happened.
Yeah, the 3 drop players might have been the difference there. Huh? We spoke about it for anyone that didn't listen to the pod last week. Mm-hmm. We touched on it there, and I think I don't know. Is that the difference in that game? Maybe so.
Oh,
both said we looked competitive for a while, so maybe that's just a little spark that we need, and they did. They looked so super impressive compared to how they have looked. So yeah, we'll see how it ends.
Local Canberra legend Nick Kyrgios has gone down again in the first round of the Canadian Open. This is his 3rd loss in a row. He's lost, of course, in the Olympics, and there was a tournament leading up to that. It's very rare for someone of his caliber to lose 3 games on a 3 matches straight. Is Nick spending too much time worrying about his tan in nice foreign countries when he should be focusing on his tennis, or is this just him?
No, that's Nick Kyrgios, isn't it?
That's just Nick, isn't it? Yeah.
Isn't it? If there's I don't know if there's another sport where there's an elite guy that is just capable of losing easy games.
Yeah.
But in the world, I don't think there's anyone else that's capable of losing when you're so good. But that's what you get with Nick Kyrgios. He's always a roll of the dice. I'm a big fan of him. I love him. I think he's a personality in a sport that doesn't have that many personalities. But yeah, it's always going to be a roll of dice. I didn't see any of these matches. So predominantly when he does lose like this, he gets in his own head. I can assume that's potentially what's happened, whether it's, he gets in his own head, someone in the crowd annoys him. But that's the excitement I think that you get with Nick Kyrgios, is you don't quite know what you're going to get on the night with him. And I don't think he'll come out of it. He seems like he can win when he wants to win. So.
Yeah, look,
I don't think he's that stressed, is he? I mean, he's sort of come out saying he's like, it's a bit of a part-time thing, and I'll sort of play tennis when I want to play tennis, and I won't. So, I mean, I think for him, he doesn't really care. And he's like raking in the dollars, so he's like, whatever.
He's just come out and said that, like, he just plays tennis because he's good at it. His passion's basketball. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine that. You're so good. You're top, I don't know, on his day, he's a top 3 talent in the sport, and he doesn't even love it.
Yeah, mate, I've reached out to Nick a few times to have him on the show. It'd be very nice to have him here. So, Nick, if you're watching, mate, come on, buddy. Come on.
Shout out to Nick Kyrgios.
Shout out to Nick Kyrgios.
All right, guys, that's the end of the news this week. We'll talk about the NFL later. It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, Mr. Bo Kennett, I'll let you go first, mate. Tell us what you got.
So this week, my good, bad, ugly. Let's start with what should we start with first? Let's go the ugly. What did I have for this week? I just completely had a mind blank. What was my ugly? No, it's gone out of my head. I said it to everyone before.
What was that?
Oh, sorry, no. Yeah,
Will
it was
Chambers.
Will Chambers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry. Thanks, Ness. Appreciate you. Yeah, Will Chambers is the ugly, I think, for this week. So anyone that isn't aware, Will Chambers has just been dropped this week by his own team, and it's come out in reports that his own team is off him. They're not a fan of him. So he's done well for his team. With last week, he got 2 or maybe 3 guys suspended. So 3 guys he was versing aren't playing this week because he's just a grub of a human being on the football field. And he does a great job at getting in their ear. And credit to him because he can do it and not, he'll start a fight basically and back out. So he doesn't get himself in trouble, which is, like I said, credit to him. But it's come out, some of his own coach, some of the players have said what he's saying to the other boys on the field is there's crossing a line. And I think for rugby league, for rugby league players to say you're crossing the line, I'm sure it's pretty bad.
Must be bad.
So it must be terrible for his own guys, his own coach to be like, no, that's enough. Yeah. So that's my ugly. It's not something we want to see in the NRL. I think it is for the casual viewer. It's kind of funny. You want to see someone getting in someone's ear, which I think it would be so good if you could mic up an NRL player.
Oh, for sure.
Hear what they do. Yeah. Oh my, what you would hear would be amazing. Especially with some of the things, like, not to go too off topic, but some of the things what Gutho's just been caught saying, which was captured on a mic, which is rare. So they say some dirty things to their own players too, but I think Will Chambers crossed the line. Yeah. For me, the bad this week is Chris Cairns. So Chris Cairns, not sure if anyone's heard about it. He's a Kiwi international cricketer. He's retired, obviously, now. I think he's early 50s. He's had a heart attack and he's been rushed to hospital in Sydney. He's got an Australian wife, family here, and they're Canberrans. So the bad news is a guy that's way too young to be having a heart attack, and a great cricketer of his own country, of our kind of generation. I watch a lot of Chris Cairns. Growing up, we were a handy cricketer, very, very good cricketer. So he's a bit unwell at the moment, and he's got a few kids, a wife. I think he's got 4 or 5 kids, maybe, a wife, and it's just ugly times for him. So I hope he's doing well. Hope the family's doing well. It's just not something you want to see. Yeah. And the good for me this week is just the excitement around Giddy, the Aussie NBA player. He was drafted 6 overall into the NBA as an Aussie, which is amazing as an 18-year-old. Yeah. So sky's the limit for him. And I watched a little bit of his debut in the summer league, and smaller kind of guy, but he just shows a lot of skill. So for us Australians to be we're really doing well in the basketball at the moment. So I think he's our next big thing, and I'm super, super keen to watch him play.
Yeah, so I think he had a few minutes in his opening game, but hurt his ankle maybe, and he went off. But I think his game was on again this morning, so I have to look into that. I'm not sure if he got game time this morning or not, but yeah, he looked very strong when he was out there. So a nice dunk too on debut.
Yeah, I've seen the dunk, and 18 years old, man. Yeah. It's just crazy to be on that stage. Crazy to be drafted. To be honest, to be fair, as an Australian, there's not many, and then to get taken 6 overall as an 18-year-old kid, sky's the limit for him. So,
very nice.
Future boomer.
Thank you, Bo. Ness, what do you got for us? Ness, what do you got for us this week?
Look, I'll take Bo's lead, and we'll start with the ugly, and we'll get better. Look, on the topic of netball, it would be remiss of me not to talk about just how ugly my Melbourne Vixens were this year in season 2021.
That's a good topic.
They came off. Look, it pains me to talk about this. We were premiers last year. Everyone sort of wrote us off that 2020 was the season with the asterisks next to it that didn't mean anything. But as a Melbourne Vixens supporter, we've been waiting for this a long time. So last year was amazing. This year has not been amazing. We did lose, our 2-star international shooters in Caitlin Thwaites and Tegan Phillip. We also lost our vice captain or co-captain, Lizzie Watson, with a foot injury, and that's seen her on the sideline being the assistant coach. It has been ugly, and I guess what it has shown me though is that the Vixens have got an amazing culture. They have won some great games, and probably ones we haven't expected, but I don't think they would be happy with their performance. It's been hard to watch. It's been even harder that Spinksy Swifts are making the finals, and For me, I think what's ugliest is out of the 4 teams left in this in the final series, Fever, Swifts, Lightning, and Giants. I don't like any of them, and so I guess I'm going to have to go for the Swifts as like the least ugly of the 4. So I can't believe I'm agreeing
How did that
with
feel
you.
to say? How did that feel to say?
Oh, I need wine after that.
It's being recorded too. This is being recorded so every single week, and put the same thing in there. It's that drop now.
Maybe he forgot to press.
Yeah, hopefully.
Beautiful.
That's the ugly. In the bad, so this is the so floating back to the Olympics. Olympic marathon was run, eventually won by Kenyan. We had an Aussie in there, Jack Rayner. But what was pretty ugly was that there was a French runner who, in horrific conditions in Tokyo, or actually Sapporo, I think is where they moved the marathon to because of the conditions.
Yeah.
Running along, and obviously at about the 28K mark, the athletes can stop and get a drink, and this French athlete's just sort of come past and knocked off a whole lot of water bottles. So the dude behind him actually didn't get a drink at all. The broadcasts were pretty nice, I thought about it, and saying, oh, you must have knocked them off. But if you look at the footage, it's pretty clear. It just goes, and it's a domino effect.
I saw the footage
out
today. Yeah.
Right,
and grabs the last bottle himself. Yeah.
So he actually came out this morning with a statement, and he said the water was wet. So I believe they put the bottles in water to keep them cold. Wet. And apparently as he's gone to grab them, they were all wet. So that's why he's knocked them over. And I'm like, bro, your hand was out. And you've gone like this.
Yeah.
All over.
Yeah.
You're a dickhead.
The footage is so clear, isn't it?
Just own it. If you're going to be a grub, be a grub.
Own it, man. Own it. Yes.
I mean, I think, it was pretty bad to watch. And I guess, is it bad? Like, is there sort of, as I look at an event manager's side of things, like how do we resolve that? How do we make that not happen again, so that there's a duty of care to the athletes who we had people collapsing and all sorts of things in that marathon. So that was pretty bad. It's probably an ugly one. Ugly. Just not bad.
That's a good ugly.
Yeah. For the good for me this week, again in the Olympics, is Ash Maloney and Cedric Dubler. This is probably just a wonderful moment in sport, a completely selfless moment from Cedric Dubler that will go down in absolute history. For those that don't know, Maloney was completing his rounds of the decathlon. He was hitting a wall, and Dubler, with no chance of medaling, is seen like encouraging his teammate. And I would love to get hold of what that footage was, and I think that would motivate anyone. But just amazing. He sacrificed his own race and his own, placing. I think he crossed last, but he was so determined to make sure his teammate did well and got a medal, and he got a bronze in the end. So
sure did,
that is just such a moment. Like, even talking about it gives me goosebumps. But the footage is amazing. Beautiful moment. And go on. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, look, we can't show that footage because the IOC hates us, but feel free to go and check out those things. Yes, the end of the decathlon and, of course, the marathon. I'm sure you can find that footage somewhere. So thank you, guys. Look, I've got a few things this week. I'm going to start with the good. Just Tokyo as a whole, the volunteers that made the games happen, the fans that were the small amount of fans that were allowed in the stands, the athletes, everyone that made this happen when not necessarily us, but most of our country was in lockdown. It gave the people of Sydney and Melbourne, and I'm sure countries all around the world, something to actually watch and something to cheer for when a lot of them would have had nothing else to do. So might have been nice if we were in lockdown back then, but the people of Tokyo, thank you. You are my good this week. So
good shout.
Shout out then. Yeah. Now the bad, I'm going to stick with the Commonwealth Games here, is the South Australian government. Now, Adelaide's not a very nice place as it is. It's one of the worst It's one of the worst spots in Australia. I'm very sorry. That's just how it is. The South Australian government.
There's nice wine. Nice wine.
It's not. That's not.
People are nice. Wine's nice. Where are you going in Adelaide?
The South Australian government has come out and said that the athletes who quarantine in Sydney for 2 weeks also have to quarantine for 2 more weeks when they get to South Australia. That means the 16 of their own athletes have to quarantine for 28 days. What does that do to the mental health of these poor athletes who usually would get welcomed home on an airplane with like kangaroos everywhere and millions of fans screaming their name? They now have to go into lockdown for like 28 days. If you guys have got nothing to do, get in touch with us on the show, come on here and talk about it. But it seems very unfair for someone to have gone overseas for 2 weeks to represent their country in what they do and have to go spend 4 weeks in lockdown. That's just shit. So
I think so. It's not a hero's return, is it?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And speaking of, my ugly this week is rather ugly. The racism that continues to haunt the AFL and sport in general. Like, guys, it's 2021. You guys are not in your 80s where back in the day it was maybe half okay to be like casually racist. You guys are in your 20s and your 30s and you grew up with all this other shit that we all know now. Why are you being racist towards guys on the AFL field? I just don't understand it. We had all this stuff with Adam Goods all these years ago where the fans were into him about certain things. I believe the young lady in the stands called him something back in the day, and the AFL stood by her and not him. And now it's all starting to rear its ugly head again. And now, as Bo spoke about earlier about Will Chambers on the field, some things get said in the heat of the moment, and you might talk about someone's mom or someone's missus. I'm all for that. That's great. Do that, all right? You never speak about their race or their children. That is the 2 rules. Race and children are off limits always. I don't know why we have to go on this whole thing every single week, and we're going to talk about why someone is being racist. Like, what the frig is wrong with you? It is 2021. Wake up. This is Australia. This is not some other country that we're not going to talk about. This is Australia, right? We all live here in harmony together. Grow up. That's a small rant. Sorry.
I think you've nailed it, man. Sorry, Ness, you go.
No, go for it, Bo.
Yeah, there's not many things. I'm not real good at taking things serious. I'm always going to take the light of the situation and piss take on as much as I can. But you got to draw the line at a few things, and racism definitely. Sphinxy, you've nailed it. That we've kind of evolved past this. I'm not sure where it lies from. If it's an educational thing, if it's just what you've grown up in, but it confuses me for sure that there's people barracking for a team but can throw racial abuse at them. Like, I can't fathom it. I can't imagine having a hatred for someone so much that I'm going to call them out on their race, and their background, but then represent their jersey. So I think for me, grow up. You have to grow up. That's bullshit behavior, and it's just not something that should be tolerated anywhere, let alone on the sport field. So whoever gets called out, I hope they get punished. I hope they find them, and hope they don't end up in the best situation they can be in, man. It's not good.
Yeah, I think you've both nailed it. I think that's exactly it. Like, we see beautiful moments at the Olympics where, you've got a whole lot of multicultural areas. You've got all of these athletes from different countries across the whole globe, and they can get along. And then we go to a local game, or we're watching a game on TV, and this is the sort of stuff that's happening. It's really sickening. And the Adam Goods situation, that was a kid that was saying that. So they're learning it from somewhere. I know the units on tolerance and acceptance and stuff that you did it, that we all did at school. We're being taught it. We're being taught how to act appropriately. And it's so bad that in this day and age that it's still continuing. So I think the punishment is it's deserved. It's not what we're about. It's not why we like sport.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, look, guys, there's a lot of sport coming up this week. We've got NFL preseason starting on Friday and Saturday. So lucky that some of us are at home. So get in touch with that. The netball over here is into the finals. There's 4 teams left. 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock on Saturday. Check those out. The Rugby League and the AFL are starting to get into the business end of the season, which Cole's jersey, very nice. All three of our teams in the Rugby League are still in contention. Some of us a little bit more contention than others, but we'll see how we go. NFL's on. Everything's starting to happen this week. The rugby is on Saturday at 5 o'clock, so don't forget to check that out. We've got real life sports scientists back on the show next week, and just 2 more things to touch on before we go. I've had my two vaccinations now. Strongly recommend you all go out and get vaccinated. We're not going to be in lockdown much longer, we hope. Go out there, do the right thing. We'll get vaccinated, and we'll all enjoy our summer. So. And before we go, just a big shout out to my dad, who he passed away this week after a very short battle with cancer. So this one's for you, Dad. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, just on that, Spinks, we from Bo and I, and for everyone tuning in, it's really brave of you to come on and do the show today. So we know it's been super rough. This one is for your old man.